camera's on, so.
We'll get going. So, welcome out tonight to November 15th meeting. First item on the agenda is public comment concerning any issue not on the agenda. So do we have any public comment? Do you need an agenda?
Good, you got another, Aaron?
Yes.
Well, you don't have one. I don't. I looked at it on the internet.
Hi. Hi, Dixon.
Come on,
How are you?
neighbor.
Good, how are you?
Oh, Tom. How you doing, Brent?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You could, nothing, everything's on the list?
Everything's all right.
Sweet. Okay, then we'll move right to item number 2. The McAllister zone change, and I know they had some medical issues, so they're not here right now. We'll move down to the bunker zone change. We've had the public hearing, now it's back for a recommendation from planning to the council. Where is the planning commission on that? How do you guys want to proceed with that? Great, a clear path.
I have a problem with it.
All right.
I'd like to see that commercial zone come from 189 and go east. And to me, if we skip 2 lots and go in and provide a commercial zone, it just seems to me that it's out of place.
I agree also, when we had, I think it was the public hearing, the 2 people that were sitting back here, I think are your neighbors. Neither one desired it, so those were the people that would affect the most, because they live there, and they weren't interested in having any changes, so one of my goals is to follow public input of what neighbors want, and so they weren't interested, so I'd also don't think it's desirable.
Okay. Any more discussion on it?
I should follow that through a little bit. It would be a lot better if the property that was along the highway, if it's still owned by Harry Wentz,
Wayne?
if he was to apply it along with other property owners in that commercial zone, it might stand a better chance of going in that direction.
Well, I guess I'm going to turn the opposite direction. I think it's just very logical that property along the highway corridor would be commercial. And I personally believe that we should go ahead with it. In fact, if there's any support for it, if there's any of the planning commission members who would go along with it, I would make a motion to advance it.
Okay. Are we ready to entertain a motion?
Tom, are you aware that that property to the west of Bunkers was zoned commercial?
I had heard that.
And then the town took it back from commercial into an RA5. So the town had that commercial and then moved it back into an RA5. Were you aware of that?
I had heard, I don't know the exact specific details, I'm not all the way up to speed on it, but I had heard that, yes.
Any more discussion? Okay, so do you want to go ahead and make a motion?
If there will be somebody who backs it.
We won't know until we vote.
If everybody's against it but me, then there's no point in it. But sure, I'll make a motion, let's proceed forward.
Okay, have a motion, is there a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second, now we have discussion on the motion. Done?
So by advancing it, it goes to back to council?
Goes back to the council with a favorable recommendation. It goes back to the council either way,
Right.
but if you guys need more information or whatever you,
That's all.
whatever direction you want to go.
Guess my preference would be too, that it's on the third corner, but
And I understand that, but also it's property driven, so applications come up at the property, that's when they want that right, they put in the application, so change the whole zone. Which the town could do, I mean, you can walk out and change zoning, which is really favorable. That gets people out the meeting.
Generate a little interest.
It has been last year, because that's what we're effectively doing with it. But anyway.
Okay, any more discussion on that? Okay, we'll call for the vote then. All in favor? 2. Any opposed? 2 to 2, 1 abstain.
Just, I've tried to have an opinion on it and to understand it, and it concerns me that we went to the work of taking that corner piece and putting it back into RA5. I don't understand why that was desirable if what we want to do is zone that whole section commercial. I can understand the neighbors' concerns about a commercial piece there. I'm a little concerned about recommending that for a commercial zoning without some sort of a business plan, some idea of what's going to happen with that piece if it goes commercial. So I think I would have to, vote against it. It just, for me, it's just too vague.
Okay, so are we sending it back to the council with the recommendation of no?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess we better do that in a motion. So we had the motion, that motion is failed, so now I need a motion to send it back to recommendation with the no.
So I make a motion that we recommend to the council that we deny the zone change.
Okay.
Is that?
I have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, any discussion on this motion?
I just have a question. Would this be the end of it for the bunker property, or would the bunkers pursue this later on?
I don't know. I don't know that answer. Yeah, don't know that.
It's always
Can I have a quick answer? The guys down, the Wyant dude, he brought in a plan. He only had a year. That's all you guys gave him. He didn't fulfill his thing. He wanted it to stay commercial, to sell it to anybody to do what they wanted. So that was the only reason it's not that he didn't want it commercial. He wants it commercial. But he didn't follow the plan that he gave to you guys. That's why it got turned back. And you say you want more than vague. You better change your law then. Because you read your thing and we don't have to specifically, as long as what's on that thing, and we're not doing anything with it, we just wanted a commercial. Nothing's changing. But it's your, I'm just saying that now, I mean, that's fine. But I'm just saying, down there, he didn't want it to be switched. But he
I
didn't
remember that they
fulfill
came in
his part of the thing. So since he didn't, that's why it got switched back. Because you guys wanted to stop it before somebody else came and put a strip joint there or whatever.
No, I didn't want to stop that.
I know. He was all for that.
Not
So-
that kind of strip joint.
So it's not that,
It's the landing strip we want.
Oh, that kind
Oh,
of strip. Yeah, maybe I'm against that, but.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I find it very interesting that in governmental meetings and in governmental planning, something comes up and something is handled a certain way, and 2 years later it comes back and somebody says, oh, we already dealt with that. I don't find that to be always the case. I think a lot can change. A lot can change in a week, much less in a year or 2 years or whatever else. And I think that the relevant point is, okay, what is the issue today? Now, whether it was commercial and the city took it back or the town took it back, that's fine. And for that particular time period, maybe that makes sense. Obviously, if it was done, then it was voted on and it did make sense. But I don't think that just simply because that happened necessarily precludes anything from happening later on in the future. I think when things line up and come about to be favorable, I think that we should have an open mind and not say, well, we already dealt with that, that's a foregone conclusion.
Okay. Any more discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
What's it for again?
Sending a recommendation to the council for,
Denying zone change.
yeah. Okay, so show me the vote again. 4? Okay, any against? 1? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we'll send that recommendation to the council. We want to back up, Mark, to you on number 2. Now you're here. We're still waiting. What I have is, I have a zone change that was started by writing, so I need something in writing to stop it. And so we're just waiting on you, Dot, or whatever your plans are to move forward or stop, and you don't have to decide that tonight, just so you know where we're at.
Okay. I wasn't aware that it needed to be in writing, okay.
Okay?
So, all right.
Do you have anything to add? You're good?
Well, if it's been going on this long, I might find some time to be able to get with you, Dot. Now, winter's about here.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's fine, that's just why I keep showing up on the agenda,
Okay,
just so you know.
all right.
All right.
Isn't Mark on record at the council meetings for saying that he wanted to discontinue that? Still need it in writing?
Still need it in writing. That's how it starts in writing, that's what I have to back it up.
Okay.
Because it's in the minutes that he withdrew his request,
It's
Right.
an application, so he has.
but he has to carry through. Oh, I see, because I'm like, why is that?
Remember when we had the annexation across the highway?
Yes.
And that guy withdrew, but everything has to keep going because there's nothing in writing. Until something comes in writing
I see.
that actually puts a stop on it. Highs and lows, so
Thank you.
it's an attorney game.
Of course it is.
Okay, we'll go to item number 4, private road standards. What the council's asked us to do is look at the private road standards. We talked about this in our last meeting that we had regarding, we have public water lines going down private roads, and what the planning commission feeling is, or their direction to the council on what to do with those roads. Whether it needs to be a public road with a public water line or a private road with a public water line. We have an easement, clearly, that we have on that road. The problem is if we do have a problem with the water line, this is just one of the problems that could occur that we looked at. That if we had a problem with that water line and it washed out the road, it's a private, so now who's gonna pay for that? The town? Who pays for that? So, do we want the water lines going down private roads to be private? So that they're responsible for their road and their water line? Or do we want, and there was concern with that for safety on people getting onto that line. I know Ryan had, he's like, if we do that, we probably should put a meter up front. And then everything beyond the meter's theirs. So, usually we isolate those with a valve, so we'd be able to isolate that if there was an issue on that line, but we always,
Is there a valve on there now, or the
Yes.
city would have to, so there is one present, the town wouldn't have to do anything?
well, we could shut it off, but right now, we've elected to keep that a public water line.
Correct.
So we'd have to go in and fix that,
The
We-
road.
the road and the water line. So that was why this question comes up. We built a new road standard that allows crushed asphalt,
Mhm.
rotomill. And so now we have water line that will be within that easement.
Well, I'm thinking there's a couple of things you could do. One is you can't build a road in that 10-foot utility easement, which I think makes sense actually. And the other one would be to, as part of that, is to have them sign a release of, a waiver of any damages if the water line were to break, that they're responsible for repairing the road. town will be responsible for the water line. But just a couple of ideas.
Do the residents that live down there, what are their desires? Do they want to keep it private?
You know, I don't even think they would ask that. They were so happy to get water so they could build down there that didn't come up. And we kinda didn't cross this till after. I got a blue stake and I thought, well, that's a private water line, it's on a private road, I don't have to mark that. And then I talked to Ryan, he's like, oh no, that's ours. Beat the trail back up there and mark that line. So it's like, then we're starting to say, well, wait a minute, well, this is a gray area, where do we draw the line? Tom?
From my experience working at, it was Questar, it's now Dominion, I didn't work for Dominion, but I did work for the gas company when it was Questar. Every single location like that, the meter is before the line. If the meter is at the house and it goes down a private road, there is not only the easement, but the gas company can come in, tear up the road to fix the gas line, and then it's the private road owner's responsibility to put it back. I would vote for, and I would suggest that any time that this is an issue where it goes down a private road, that we have the meter out of the street before it turns down the private road. And that everything from the meter into the property is the property owner's responsibility. And it's really clear, and it was really easy to deal with when I did work at the gas company, that, hey, if it's private, right here is the demarcation. And up to that point is the company's, and from that point on, it's yours. And that takes care of any washouts or any 10-foot easement or anything else like that. And of course, they did require that all gas lines that went in had to be inspected to company standards, which I think we would have to do as well. And that we were the only party to determine whether it was up to standard. It wouldn't be something that we get into a debate with them on, but that we come in and put up the meter, and from that point on, it's their responsibility. And if we have a situation like that where the water company's already paid for the water line and it's already in, I guess we'd have to look at that as to, you know, how much are we giving away to the customer, and what would we do to recover our expenses on that, because we really should go putting in a line and then just giving it away.
Yeah.
But I think that the issue is very simple, and that is put the meter out before it turns into the private road.
I think that's pretty unworkable though for residents, like in this case, where you've got 3 separate residences. Now you got 1 meter, you gotta divide the water up, and you got 1 water bill, and that means the water company collect from. For example, like you said, I've got a gas line coming down my driveway, it belongs to the gas company. The meter's right at the house, and it's probably that way with everybody else. If it has to be dug up, I'll have to fix the damage afterwards. I'm sure they'll push the trench closed, but if I have pavement or something there, then probably it's gonna have to be restored.
Yeah, I don't think we should ever be in a position where we have to replace a road because of a washout or some emergency. Questar never did. In any situation where they're, I mean, including a concrete patio deck, if it went underneath somebody's property and there was a gas leak, I mean, that concrete came out of there right now, because we got a gas leak, we got a possibility of an explosion. And once that patio came out, it was the homeowner's responsibility to put it back on their own, because, and this is the doctrine on it, was that, well, you chose to put that patio over the top of the line. There's an easement there, and you can do that, but you're gonna be responsible. If we ever have to dig it up, we're digging it up, and you gotta put it back. I don't think that the town should have to be responsible for putting pavement or rotomill or anything else back, because we accommodated a customer.
So would Gary proposed a waiver that would say that, a little bit what Tom was saying is that, yes, our water line is under your road, but if we have to access it, or if it ruptures, then the road's your problem.
Well, it wouldn't be a waiver specific, or so much as it would be
An easement.
contractual in the original agreement.
Right.
That we will provide you water, but here's our terms. And if you don't like these terms, well, then we don't need to provide you water.
Yeah, our water is under your road, but if we have to get at the water, if the water decides to leave, then the road is your problem. Is that doable?
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, we can do a development agreement with any of these. It's just, we'll just track it, I mean, we'll have to put it in, and we go with the building.
Is, Eric, is that subdivision, is there acreage down there to create more lots?
Not in the configuration they just did.
So you're at the maximum of lots that will be in that area?
On that road standard. Now, if they change that standard and extended that road through one of those lots, it could continue to go.
Okay.
But then we'd run into other problems because the zone changed back in that area as industrial. Access industrial through residential zone, so.
So it's most likely that that road would not continue north any further than it is now?
Well, that's our plan to this point. I'm not saying it
Never
would.
say never.
Because there is a possibility the acreage is there.
Yeah.
Well,
Save the
if I,
water, yeah.
if I could, I'll put my water department hat on, because I do work for Daniel Water Department. And from the beginning, when that subdivision, the application come in and we worked on it, the agreement, I believe, was that they had run the water line at their expense. So these three residents have paid $70,000 to $80,000 to put that water line in with fire hydrants. I think it would be really tough at this point to, a lot of the contractual agreements have already been talked about, and that had to do with the building permit. My recommendation is to simply let the town take that water line over.
I think at this point on that particular subdivision, the town owns it already.
Yeah.
We're looking for future, what avenues so we don't get in this situation do we go?
In the future.
Right. Yeah, I think that one's pretty much sealed deal because,
So are we just looking at that to see if that's how we want to go with all of them, or if this is just?
Right.
I think each of them would be a little bit different depending on how many lots we're trying to service and what the subdivision plot was looking like. I think, to me, you almost have to do it just individually on the application. It'd be tough to get a set of rules right now, would it not?
well, if we don't have something in place and they come and apply, we're still out in the wind. Unless something's in place, we can say, no, it says this here, you have to do this before.
So this could really be handled by rules that are when you apply for a connection to the water.
Yeah, we'll
We
sort
don't
of
need
letter.
to change the ordinance or anything.
Just a question. Why do you allow private roads in subdivision?
Why would we want
Why
a
would-
public road?
You're gonna end up with them anyway.
We might, but it's, all that is liability to the town. All public roads are, they're not money makers, we don't make money on any road, so. I never realized that until Francis Smith was on the planning commission, and that's how he said it, why would you want it public? Why
Well, I
would the
think you're
town want
gonna
any
end up
road?
with, I mean, I've seen this over in Summit County, and the homeowners association falls apart,
Mhm.
and pretty soon nobody answers the phone, and they're gonna be calling you anyway,
They may be.
you know, charge them, and,
It's gonna cost them a whole lot of money to make it a public road. But
yeah.
Well, and that was part of the problem with this new road standard. How do you plow? I can't send a county
You can't
down
do
a
it.
Roto Mills Road to
You
plow.
can't do it.
I mean, that's just, but that was the road standard that these, these few lots we have in the back to get in at a reasonable price, that we allowed this road standard. So now we have to address the road standard and what we do with that road.
Yeah, I think it's a long, I don't know. You could be
And
right.
yeah, and I agree.
I think it's a mistake, you're gonna end up with it anyway. We're gonna, as taxpayers, we're all gonna end up fixing it. It's a lower
See, and
standard.
I figure it's not gonna be, I mean, I don't expect the town to come fix my driveway when it falls apart, and these people have chosen to live at the end of a very long driveway, essentially, is what we granted them by these
That's-
changes we made. So it's
Exactly.
their responsibility to move their snow. If they've gotta hike out, that's not my problem. That's
We
their
didn't
problem.
think the water system was our problem
Well,
either, and now we own it.
exactly, but that affects everybody, and their road only affects them. We've got 3 houses on that road. I don't see any reason why the town should have to pave, deal with, plow their road.
Well, I don't think we would have to pay. I mean, that's.
Well, if we bring it up to standard, it has to be paid for, which means it has to be paid.
Yeah, but I think they should pay for all that.
Well, then they can just keep it. And
Well,
You think it's a better plan?
I do.
I
think
would
they should
agree with that,
maintain-
is if everything's done to the normal standard, I would agree with that.
Well, and I have people that I know that live out in Garf Ranches,
Uh-huh,
and they plow their own roads.
right, right.
So as far as I'm concerned, that's the same kind of a thing. If you choose to live out at the end of a Roto Mill Road, then you understand you need to own a loader. You'll be keeping your road clear.
So there's
We'll
3
discuss
houses
in
on that road.
825,
What's that?
which we'll discuss in 825.
Yes, Brett, there's 3 houses.
3 houses.
If there was 4, you would have to do the road standard.
Then it has to be paved.
Oh, is that, okay, so
Yeah.
that's the line.
3 is the
Yeah.
maximum that we've allowed on that standard.
Okay.
So one loader each, they're still okay.
One,
Don't you have something similar going on at the property Lynn Kitchen used to own?
We don't plow that.
Well, but for the water, I remember him fixing the water through there. I hauled the excavator over for him.
Yeah, well, he's not on town water.
Oh, okay.
He has a well, so,
So it's totally different.
yeah.
And don't look too closely at it either. Eric, I think what Kim said is exactly right. And again, referring back to my experience with the gas company, when somebody came in and the gas line was not into an area where they wanted it, they either had to have, and the gas company would do it, the gas company would come in and put it in, but they had to pay the entire expense for it. Or, okay, the other option was, they could hire their own contractor, but the gas company would inspect it, but it was 100% their cost. They had to pay 100% of it. Or, we saw several people who were very ambitious and did their own work, but their work had to be inspected the same as what the gas company line was put in. In any of those cases, it was 100% on the cost to the property owner, and when it was done, they signed over that part of the line itself, that part of the extension, that was signed over and became a gas company line. And the same thing would be true with the water line, is that they had to pay for it, and they have to meet the standards, and now before we turn the water in, once it all gets finished, they no longer own that, the town owns it. And as far as maintaining it and so forth, at that point, it could go either way. We could say, well, contractually, you are responsible to maintain it, or we could say, yeah, now that it's ours, we will maintain it. And there's been instances where both of those situations have occurred with either electrical lines, telephone lines, gas lines.
Yeah.
The least of my experience is in the water department. I've never worked for a water department. I think that they would be 100% responsible for paying for it, and then they turn it over to the water company.
And that's what happened here. They did turn it, it becomes town property once it's done.
Then the next question is, if it is a town line, then the liability enters in. And I think that does need to be dealt with contractually up front, so that there's no gray area or no question when something does happen. When something does happen, we say, hey, look, you agreed to this. You chose to put it in down a private line with a private driveway or private road, however we want to say it, and this line was put in, and you chose to do that, and you take all risk with that. That this was not there, was not part of the town system, was not part of the water company, and so all risk with it goes with you. And if you didn't want to do that, well, then you don't have to get water from us.
Right.
Plain as that.
Yeah, it's definitely we didn't see this coming. It kind of snuck up after we did.
So this really is title drawing, it has really nothing to do with private road standards, it has to do with utilities and utility easements.
Yeah.
And so I was gonna say the same thing, when it's inspected, say for the gas company, and they've accepted it, if something happens to that line that's not, that I dug into it or I did something by driving over it or something, the gas company will take care of it. And I think the town probably would be on the hook for the water system too. So maybe you had a pressure spike that caused something or anything like that. You're still gonna have liability for your lines, but you're also getting the revenue from the people that are using the line at the other end. So,
Yeah, I think the real question is, what about the damage? Usually it's in a road and it's our road, so.
And the gas company fixing that isn't a foregone conclusion. I can tell you there were plenty of lines where the gas company contractually would not take care of it. The only thing that they would do is if there was a leak and it was a public hazard, they would cut the gas, period. And then when you got your line fixed, we'll turn it back in. But when you get the line fixed, call our inspector, it's gotta meet the standards. And some lines that the Questar put in, yes, they would cover everything up to the meter. Others that were an extended distance like that, and the property owner had to put it in, the gas company does not cover that.
Well, these particular residents, there's 3 of them, they wouldn't have been able to permit their lots and their houses without some type of fire protection. And they had to get the fire flow down there, and because of that, you've got, if I'm not mistaken, there's either 3 or 4 fire hydrants. And they had to put those in so they could get the building permit through the fire department. And so, you know, whether we like it or not, we've got a system that's gonna supply that protection.
well, and you've got another point there then, that's a larger line than they actually need. I mean, just, you've gotta have there for fire protection, you've gotta have the flows out of each hydrant. If the industrial area were ever to be developed, and the town owns the water line, you could extend that water line to the industrial area. Otherwise, you're gonna have to run a whole new line clear down there.
Yeah, this is a little different circumstance than if you had one house and the line ran, you know, 1,200 feet.
Yeah, but on any of these. So I guess my thought at this point is this ought to be pushed to the water department or those in charge of the water system to make a recommendation, because they're really the ones that have to deal with it.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make that a motion.
So what would you want them to deal with? You want them to deal with the fact that if their water damages something, they're not liable?
How they should handle cases where we have long, you know, water lines before the meter, where they're installing new water lines.
This
Before the meter.
is quite unique, because if it was 4 lots, the town would own it and there'd be a road. There's 3 lots here and you're trying to make it private, so it's kind of a unique situation. But, you know, the water department, if you were to ask me what was going on in that instance, I'd kick it back to planning and zoning.
Fine. But I'm just saying, what do we do when there is a extension of the water line in front of the meter, before the meter? Do we say you can't do that, you got the meter directly off the town line? Or do we allow them to put the meter back by the house, and then how do we handle the line in between? And so,
I think the way this has been handled, in my opinion, is probably the best way to do it. You don't have that $80,000 expense up front.
Right.
And you do collect the monthly fees, and you're able to read the meters and inspect things on a monthly basis. Right now, we've got illegal water use down on one of the residents right now. We've got a direct connection with no meter on it
For construction?
for construction. So, I would think that that's the best way to handle it, in my opinion.
can you turn that into a motion?
Well, I don't know, wait, hold on though. We have a motion, so
Okay.
we have a motion. Are you withdrawing your motion?
Withdrawing the motion.
Oh, he's withdrawn before we asked for a second. Okay, motion's been withdrawn. Okay, so now we'll entertain a motion.
I don't know how to put that in motion.
I don't know, but
Leave
now
it
Terry's
alone.
scared. That was a long motion.
So the water meter for all three of those lots is out by the road, the main road?
No.
It's
No,
at
they're up
each
by the
house.
house.
Yeah,
And
they,
there's
But
three
there's
of
a connection turnoff from the city property at the very beginning where it hooks onto
And
3,000.
an isolation valve, yes.
And all the lines in the city, you try to put a valve in whenever you get a G, or
Okay.
you've got a bigger line, so that you can control, you don't have to turn the whole town off when you have one problem. We probably have 40 valves all over town.
So Kim, what would happen if that line ruptures and it takes out their road? At this point, what would happen?
Well, first of all, you want to get the water turned off.
Right.
That's
There by the
an
road.
8-inch valve, or an 8-inch line will kick a lot of water out. In
Yeah,
fact, it
that's-
drained that tank up on the hill, which is
Yeah.
8,000 gallons, probably in
So that
about
would
3
make a
hours.
mess.
But you get that turned off, and then whatever damage is there, your water line is not, in that particular subdivision, is pretty much off of the road. Even if we had the road in there, that would still be 10 feet, I think, west.
So it's
Not
in an
mistaken.
easement.
it is,
So-
remember we had them do a 50-foot easement?
50 foot.
And they're up on the top side of that.
Okay.
So,
So we're thinking it's gonna blow a crater in the easement.
It will, if that line blew, it
This is
would.
Rocky Daniel, we'd have a piece of green grass about the size of this room. when we grab.
There you go. It might throw rocks.
The good news is there's only 80,000 gallons and then it'll stop.
now the repair on that line, you know, let's say that the 8-inch line was really cracked and ruptured for 4 feet or what have you, that can be a pretty expensive repair. But those residents have still done their part in trying to get a building permit and a lot in. They've paid for everything, plus the fire hydrants, and now something like that happens. That could happen anywhere in town, by the way.
Yeah.
But everything in this town is what we consider to be in good shape, because somebody had the wisdom years ago to put all new lines in and hydrants. So, that particular road doesn't mean it's more risky than any other place in town. And I would think that the town would come in and repair that leak, even though it was purchased by the homeowners.
But the town owns the pipe.
Do we,
Who
Well,
owns
that's
the
what
pipe?
we're discussing,
I thought
really.
we were talking about the road, but the pipe and the road are in question.
In this one, we own the pipe.
Oh, that's what I thought, okay. So if the
in
pipe
this
would
instance, we
break,
own it.
we go
But-
fix it and then they'd have to fix their road.
Well, I
the
don't know.
question is,
I don't
is
know.
that how it's
Yeah.
set?
If your pipe causes the damage, probably on the hook for some fixing, I would imagine. But the reason that it's coming up is because we've already approved 2 more of these that haven't built yet. One right across the road and one up on Little Sweden.
Then there are also the less than 4 houses.
They're less than 4 houses.
Eric, my inclination would be that obviously the town would take care of anything in existence, but that anybody that comes to us with something new, that we would handle it exactly that way, that, okay, you pay for it and deed it back to the town. But, and I don't see any difference with those fire hydrants either. I think that, okay, well, they had to have the fire hydrants in order to get their building permit, that's fine, they chose to do that. And in order to have the fire hydrants, then that means we have to have an 8-inch line, they chose to do that. And if something later down the road happens to that, it's because of the choices that those homeowners made. The town was not compelled to put in that 8-inch line for some purpose that the town had. I think it resides, I think the maintenance and the repair and the liability should contractually reside with the property owners.
So would that happen at the permitting point?
Yes.
I mean, that's where we would have to
Yeah,
have.
when they come to us, they have to, before they can get fire to sign off, the health department has to sign off, and they have to have culinary water. If that's a well, it's a well. If that's the town,
So at which
however.
point in the process would we want to have some sort of verification or protection for the town that we are not gonna be liable for what happens if the water line
I
goes.
think it would have to go at the point of will serve letter, so they're aware of that,
Okay.
right up front, when they come to us and say, will you serve us? Yes, we will, and here's our terms.
Exactly.
So at that point, there could be a letter, there, well, I mean, not a letter like Dear Sir, but a
Yeah.
letter like document that says, yes, this is what we will do for you, but this is what you're on the hook for.
Right.
Well, you have another situation, you have the elementary school up there. We extended that line all the way from 3,000, well, partly from 3,000 south. There was probably a block in there that was down to the north. But when the school went in, they paid for that water line. I think that was a $400,000 project, wasn't it?
No, it was
It was like 200, I thought.
200.
And-
Well, because we had 180, I think is what it come in at. We thought it was 200 and come in at 180.
Okay, $200,000 project, but at the time, we didn't discuss any of this with the school and tell them they're gonna be liable for that line up there.
Well, yeah, but that one was different than a public road.
Because it's got public road.
Yeah, so that's a little different.
The school's also a public entity, it's not a private citizen.
When I got a permit for Three Farms Road, I thought Three Farms Road was a public road when I was permitting it. I did not realize it was private. When I was going
It's
through.
your fault.
Yeah, you've gotta make the motion.
Okay. I'm gonna try and make a motion, you guys will probably shoot it down, but I'm just going to say that we recommend to the council that all lines in front of the meter will be paid for by the development, but will be deeded to the town upon completion.
Did you get that, Gary?
All lines what?
All water lines in front of the meter will be paid for by the development and be deeded to the town upon completion.
So that takes care of the part of who owns the water lines. That still leaves us.
But see, I still think that part's the water company in their letter, their agreement when they allow for connections.
That needs to be
The
in.
word,
The wording
I
for
lost the
that.
words, his agreement to serve is, okay, so that should be the water company to put that together and say, this is what we're willing to do.
We don't have anything like that in our agreement now, I don't
No.
think. I guess it could be added.
Well, yeah, and this is a new animal. We've created these lots before. They had to have the frontage, we wouldn't allow it, so those homes couldn't have been built prior to us adopting the new road standard.
Make it a lot more work for ourselves.
Well, it still
It's
could
not
have
rural.
happened, but they might have done a
They put
paved road
public
instead.
road.
It's still
Right, they,
public
well,
road.
yeah, then, yeah,
So it still could have happened.
yeah, they could have built the road.
They could have built a more expensive road to fix than what they did,
Right.
so.
Okay, so I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Does the motion include the water company becoming liable for repairs and everything else afterwards? I'm not clear on what the motion says.
The motion just says that the town will own the water line at the completion, and then I didn't put it in the motion that recommend the water company figures out what their agreement's going to do with customers.
Each individual customer.
So in their agreement
Well,
to
it's gonna be the
serve, they
same,
have the
but-
contract. That, yeah, we'll serve you, yeah, we can provide water, but you're gonna get the repairs.
I think it's a little ambiguous, but
Well, water company's gonna have to do the verbiage.
I'm not making the motion, so.
If you'd like to suggest some amendments to the motion, I'd be open to that.
Well, I don't know, it could go either way. It could be on the town, as, you know, since the town owns it, the town agrees benevolently to take care of it. Or it could say, well, since this is new and it has not been in existence and you want it to be in existence, and you're going to receive the benefit of developing your property, you have to agree that you're gonna take care of it. I could see it either way, it doesn't really matter to me, it's just what everybody else wants. But I do think it needs to be specified, I think it needs to be clear as to what we're gonna do and not get into a situation after the fact and then try to say, well, no, it's yours. No, it's your responsibility. We have this big fight going back and forth. That's how we end up.
Well, Gary's motion simply states that we will retain or take ownership of the water rights.
Right.
And I think the water company needs to look at their contracts and make sure that they're covered. I mean, I don't understand all of their
questions that-
issues.
The questions that you're bringing up would be in the contract with the water receiver and the water company, not planning and zoning. Because we're not the ones selling the water.
Well, no, I mean,
We don't own the water. Planning and zoning, we don't.
whether
They
we're
have that
liable or
contract.
whether we're not is not up to the,
Right, and all we're doing is making a recommendation to the council,
Right.
so.
I think Gary's motion stands alone. It has nothing to do with the second issue. In the absence of another agreement, the town is going to be liable. You're gonna lose that battle.
Yeah.
So if you have an agreement in place before you let them sign on, then that would stand up, but you can't. I mean, all the ones that you're gonna have in place now, you're screwed up, like you said, you own. And if they cause damage, you're gonna own that as well. So his motion stands by itself, and then you have to have an agreement when you sign these people on as to what they agree to take care of.
So I'll second the motion. You seconded it.
Yep.
Now we're in the
We were in the
discussion
discussion phase again.
Okay.
Who was the owner or developer? How was that stated again?
I just said by the development,
By the development.
maybe that's not the best way, but it's just a recommendation, so I think it's clear enough for the council to know what we're talking about.
Okay.
I agree. There are some homeowners, some residential builders that are very surprised when they find out that they are developers. They don't know that. It does surprise some people. I'm not a developer, I build a house. Okay, so any more discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote on that motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, so we'll need a recommendation letter on that one too. Awesome. All right, the big one, 825, home-based businesses. We made it. It has gone through many changes back and forth. The council made some more changes and sent it back to you for a recommendation.
So if they make changes to it, what do they want from us?
They want you to look it over, see if it's okay, and make a recommendation to the council for adoption or not.
And now we're in discussion?
And you bet.
Well, I've been at a lot of the meetings. I still have some problem with some of the words and some of the sections. So I don't know what you want to do, if you want to go through it again, I'll say what I want to say, or what I think it should say, or whatever. The town can, you all can participate and see what people think.
do you have a current copy?
I do have a current copy. I printed off 4 of these.
I did not print one out.
I print
I read it, but I didn't print it out.
You're okay? Anybody out here? And then I have those. Everybody good?
We'll take one back.
Okay.
A fresh version.
This is the fresh version, this is the draft version of the old one. Before the council meeting last time, this was the one that was before the changes were made in the last council meeting. So I should rip that up and hide it, huh?
Yeah, get rid of that.
Get rid of that one, I've got about 10 versions.
Yeah.
I still have a trouble with the name, and I'd still like it to say something like home, occupation, or small business. The name still, I have trouble with it.
The home occupation.
The home
office and
occupation,
business.
the word home occupation, that says to me that it's in the home. That is not what we're talking about. So I'd like to change it to say home, business, home and/or small business is what I'm proposing.
You're proposing,
Home and small businesses in the town of Daniel. Doesn't have to say that, town of Daniel. The word occupation leads me down the path that the business is gonna be inside the home. We are not talking about that anymore. You can have it inside your home, but you can also have stuff outside your home and run your business outside the home with guidelines, correct?
The
So-
and kind of separates it into two separate things already.
What's
What
that?
does?
The and in there, the home
Cool.
occupation is one thing, and then and business is another.
And small businesses, I'd like to
Say
say.
small business.
I just, thought word occupation throws me off, so
So
I
you're
would
saying
say,
you want to add small, is that?
I'm proposing that we say home and small businesses. Done. I'm not gonna die on the hill, but there's other things that are more important than that, but.
Okay, how's everybody feel about that before we move on? Adding that word, anybody have
That's a
heartburn?
question. So is the issue that you have with the word occupation? So could you just remove occupation if it
Sure.
says home, office, and business?
And small business. Sure. I'm good with that.
Because it's also in the text down below
It is.
occupation, so you have to change it
Yep.
all the way through.
Yep. And I'm proposing that we might add small business in a lot of the sections anyway, but I'm fine with that.
And the term home occupation permits is probably a little unclear. Is a home occupation permit a certificate of occupancy?
Because are you occupied?
I have trouble with
I'm looking
that.
at that, wondering if we just want to be as clear as possible.
Exactly. Okay. And we've spent a lot of time on it, so let's try to get it as right as we can.
Well, the term home occupation is used by most municipalities to mean a business that's operated from home as opposed to downtown.
But is
So-
it in the home or outside the home, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters. I think that we're being consistent with other municipalities when we say home occupation. I think that's a term that's commonly used. For instance, in electrical, where the wires come down the pole and enter into your house, what do you call that? Well, a lot of people call it, well, that's where the power comes in. In electricians, what do they call that, Brent?
A lateral?
Where it comes right into the house, where the meter is, what do you call that?
Well, that's a meter base.
That's the service,
That's the service entrance.
service entrance.
Yeah.
So we're being consistent with other municipalities to use the term home occupation. I don't think that we need to reinvent that particular wheel myself.
Like I said,
I don't have a problem if we want to add home occupation, office, and small business. I think that's very, very fine to do that. But I think to do away with home occupation, that puts us out of consistency with the rest of the municipalities that use that particular term.
Okay, good point.
sounds good.
Did the commissioners get a chance to read the email from John Blotter?
I did.
Yes.
I tend to agree with John on that matter.
Wait a minute, is that,
Which one?
The 3 semis.
That's back on K,
It's K.
and I've rewritten that also, so may I read that and see what everyone thinks about that? Because I agree with John, but I also agree with our trucking companies, so I tried to hit a happy medium. I mean, they've been here every dang meeting, and so have I, so we gotta hit a happy medium here and try to get everybody on task here. So what I said on K, if you've all got the copy of that, I didn't like the way it read, so this is how I said it. Only 5 pieces of industrial equipment such as backhoes, track hoes, and I added dump trucks. We could throw that out, but I thought that was kind of an important piece. Mini track hoes, skidsters, and lifts will be allowed for a small business. And we can argue about that terminology. of
no, that's fine,
business.
that's fine.
Period. Only 3 pieces of said equipment can be visible from the front of the property. And then underneath that, I thought, dirt hills, trees, and approved fences to hide equipment will be encouraged. Now, I'll continue on and then you guys can ask questions.
This is all still under K?
Under K, so
Okay.
that was kind of K.
Okay.
And then the other big discussions that took us quite a bit of while was in, as in Nancy, moving in up under K, so that would become I. I said, or thought about, trucking, shipping, and transport, small businesses are only allowed for owner-operator residents. 3 tractor trailers are allowed. Only 2 will be visible from the front of property. The 3 tractor trailer rigs are included in the total pieces of equipment as described in K.
Okay.
So we're
That
gonna
was,
meet
that
their
was down on
need.
N?
That was,
last part?
yes, yes,
And so while we're on them, are you done with N? there?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason those two are separated, and this is what I thought as the council went through that, is because those are two different things. The backhoes, the track hose, and that's why the trucks weren't included in K.
Yes.
Because that's why they're down in N, because of that type of a business. So the three pieces of equipment was different than what the trucks were. That's why those two were separated. They were together and then we pulled them apart, because they're two different animals.
So now I can have
Equipment versus.
3 tractor trailers and 5 backhoes?
Mhm.
see, that's what yeah.
That's getting pretty industrial.
And that's what I thought we talked
Well,
about in
and-
the last meeting, that we're kind of sticking them together. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, that's what I
I
thought.
think they kind of need to be tied together.
Well, I have a question regarding that whole thing. I could not find it, but it seemed like there was some discussion, and I was out of town. I work out of town on the Monday nights anymore, and at some point, the numbers of equipment and all of the involvement there, somebody made the suggestion that it had to do with the size of the property, and that
We kind of got over all that.
what happened to that? My question is, where did that go, and what would be the reason why we don't have that involved? Can you answer that, Eric, do you know?
Well, I think when we looked at the size of the property, the council kind of felt that was more of a property right issue, because you have more property, you can have this instead of just a zone. And so they thought that was arbitrary and capricious.
But if I have 5 acres, I can have a house. If I have 4, I can't.
Well, and
Same argument. I'm just
Yeah.
being
Yeah,
a
true.
troublemaker.
And I've got
You're
another
absolutely
issue
right.
specifically about that, okay?
Mhm.
Abutting my property, there are 7 lots, and I think it's just over 6 acres. And the recent developments on that particular property is that another property owner out on the street has his house that makes 8 lots that would put it a total of about 7 acres. That means that within 7 acres, I can see 40 pieces of equipment, and there was, last year, not 2017, 2016, one of the renters in one of those properties was a concrete pumper, and he drove home an industrial, not just a commercial, but an industrial concrete pump truck. On the other hand, you take somebody who has 20 acres, 30 acres, 50 acres, are they still going to be limited to 5 when on this 6-acre lot there can be 40? I don't feel that's equitable. I think that needs to change. I think we need to go back to how much acreage do you have as to how much you can put there. In addition to that, now this is just hypothetically, there are many existing lots of record that are only 1 acre.
That's correct.
And just like what was said just now, I don't, was it Kim, did you say it, or Gary, whoever?
It was Gary.
Yeah, blame me.
5 pieces of equipment and 3 semis on 1 acre? I don't think that's right. I think that it needs to be subscribed to by the size of the property and how visible it is. There's a lot of pieces of property where equipment can be all but forgotten about because of the size of the property. And yet, on a 1 acre lot, we're gonna let them do this. I don't think this fits.
Okay.
Yeah, Brent?
I think it's really 2 separate issues. Because down here it says shipping, transport, and trucking businesses. So they're gonna be allowed just the big trucks. They're not gonna be allowed the 3 up above. That's the way I read that.
Boy, that's not the way it says.
Well, that's not what we talked about last time. You were there last time.
No, I wasn't. I was on vacation.
And Mark helped me with that, you guys were there.
You weren't there when we voted you in on council?
I ran for a reason.
I mean, we can certainly separate it, but that wasn't what I remember happening.
And
I'm kind
Mark?
of confused though, what you're trying,
No, I'm not trying to do anything.
what
just-
we're saying here. So, go ahead.
No, you go first.
I don't think you understand your question. on the separating them. Or
Well,
what happened?
and that's why we thought we did that.
Yeah, I thought we
Because
did
chipping
that,
was
but-
different than what
Well, that's-
somebody coming in with the
I think
equipment
that's
would
what it
be.
says, it says
That's
shipping,
what I thought
transport,
we
and trucking.
agreed on also.
Do we just need to or say in there that if you're allowed N, that you can't have K? Vice versa?
Get it?
Because that's really what they're saying.
I'm just curious, because